Hey guys, what's up? Excuse my attire. I just got home from work. I should be sleeping, and I'm going to be going right to bed right after this. I'm not even editing this until I wake up. But I just wanted to get this out the way while I still have it in my head, because I know if I sleep on it and wake up, I might not get this exactly the way that I have it now, so I might as well get it out now. There are actually two topics I wanted to talk about, but I know I only have time for just one because I am tired. One was going to be on cognitive dissonance, but I think I want to... Let's just put it this way. All these more serious issue things, these more, the things I'm thinking about, they're all tied together. They may sound like they're... Some of my next few videos may sound like they're kind of going on different paths, but they're actually related, and I'm hoping I'm going to be able to tie it all together, but let me get on with it. But this is one thing I wanted to touch on right now, and I should have said this earlier. I actually was going to put a video on this last year, toward the end of the year, and I never got a chance to, but now I'm going to do it. Libertarians. See, I wanted to touch on conservatism, but these days you can't really talk about conservatives without talking about libertarians, which is a shame because they're not one and the same, and they never have been. And if, right-thinking people have their way, it never will be, but that's slowly beginning to change. Right now, there seems to be a concentrated effort by certain hardcore conservatives, and here I'm putting conservatives in quotes, and I'll get into that possibly in another video. There seems to be a concentrated effort by so-called hardcore conservatives to hijack the libertarian label and the Libertarian Party. I'm noticing a lot of yahoos now going around calling themselves libertarian, and they're not. By any stretch of the imagination. If you know what a libertarian is, and you listen to these idiots, you'll realize, no, these guys are not fucking libertarian. Just because you say you are doesn't mean you are. Let's put it this way. I'm finding a lot of, people claiming that, oh yeah, I'm a libertarian because I believe in small government, and I believe in, slashing taxes and all that. That's what makes me a libertarian. No, fuck you. That does not make you a libertarian. That's not the only qualifying, factor to make you follow those things. Because there's a couple of other things that libertarians believe that, a lot of conservatives, if they actually paid attention to that particular party line, would make them run away from it fast. For one thing, libertarians believe in total freedom for citizens in this country. That means that they don't believe in fucking with other people just because they happen to believe a different thing or live a certain lifestyle or whatever, or their personal actions. They don't just believe in freedom from big government and freedom to mess around with businesses, which is what a lot of conservatives really are about. Whenever they say they want freedom from big government, what they're really saying is they don't want somebody telling them that, oh, you can't fuck with those people. The libertarians believe that you are not supposed to fuck with those people. Let me read something from the actual official Libertarian Party website. Question: are libertarians liberal or conservative? Answer: libertarians are neither. Unlike liberals or conservatives, libertarians advocate a high degree of both personal and economic liberty. For example, libertarians advocate freedom in economic matters, so we're in favor of lowering taxes, slashing bureaucratic regulation of businesses, and charitable rather than government welfare. But libertarians are also socially tolerant. We won't demand laws or restrictions on other people who we may not agree because of personal actions or lifestyles. Now, think about what I had just read, and think about some of the people who are claiming themselves to be libertarians. Does that seem to match, especially that last part that I just read? Does that seem to match? No, it doesn't. Because you'll find conservatives claiming to be libertarians who at the same time want to make sure that, homosexuals can't get married, and that minorities continue to have a hard time in this country, and that they continue to fuck with other people just because they don't happen to look a certain way or act a certain way, or, interestingly enough, believe in a particular religion, which is another red flag for anybody claiming to be a libertarian. Libertarians have been known to be vehemently against any sort of religious rule or religious law in this country. Most of the prominent ones always have been. There's a simple reason for this. A common theme for true libertarians is that they can't stand authority. Period. That's why they call themselves libertarians, and they advocate personal freedom. They don't like authority figures telling them what the fuck to do. And the church is an authority figure. You want to know what my very first exposure to libertarian stuff? It wasn't a website. It wasn't, on the news. It wasn't a libertarian preaching on the street. No, it was a book called What the Church Doesn't Want You to Know. That was my first exposure to libertarian literature. A book about the abuses of religion in the church. And toward the end of the book, they started talking about, their party line. But most of the book was about all the stuff in religion that most religious leaders don't want you to know. Which is the type of stuff that, atheists on YouTube talk about all the time. So we know it now. What I also found interesting was that this book was written a long time ago. I think it was written in the early 80s. And one of the things that was one of the big articles in that book, because it was a collection of essays, that particular book, there was this huge part in the book talking about the religious right slowly taking over politics in this country and how that was a bad thing. And that it was something that anybody who truly cared for freedom would fight against. And this was, like I said, this was an old book, a book written in the freaking 80s, and they were yelling about, don't, let the religious right take over. Don't let them get into politics. They're hijacking things. They're going for the totalitarian type bent. Or, for me to put it in more, layman's vulgar language terms, they're going to fuck shit up. This is libertarian saying this. So, when you see somebody like, say, a jackass like Glenn Beck going around claiming that he's a libertarian, but then at the same time saying that he wants, that this government is taking religion out of the country and that's not right, you realize right then and there that he either has no fucking clue what a libertarian is, or more likely he's hijacking the name for popularity. No libertarian would be advocating any sort of religious rule in politics. No libertarian whatsoever would be advocating any sort of religious influence whatsoever in the national law. Not to mention, they also would not advocate any law that specifically targets a group of law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. Or should I say, government-jacked citizens, because we know how the way taxes get taken these days. So yeah, I'm noticing that libertarians are now the new group of people that these conservatives, and again, I'm putting it in quotes, are hijacking. Now, like I said, I'm probably going to do another video just on that topic alone, but this is not the first time that these people have hijacked a name. The last name they hijacked was conservative. I am noticing a trend as I look throughout history. There's always a certain select group of people who just hate anything that does not look like them. They always react out of fear and hatred for anything that they deem un-American. You saw them in the early 1900s when women were trying to get the right to vote. You saw them in the 60s railing against civil rights. You saw them later on in the 80s when they were railing against the decadent society and people without religious values. And I noticed they always took a new name. Back in the 60s, you found that a lot of those people who were trying to, fight against black people and their right to vote were Democrats. Oh, they were Dixiecrats. They were different. No, they were freaking Democrats, okay? Then when the Democratic Party started leaning more and more towards blacks, trying to get their vote, they migrated to the Republican Party and then started calling themselves conservative. And now that the Republican Party is, just like any other political party, basically saying, we're going to do whatever the fuck we want and fuck you, now they're either calling themselves Tea Partiers or Libertarians. But it's the same group of people. The group of people who, if you really think about it, are probably the most un-American possible, because Americans, the so-called American values are supposed to be, freedom for all citizens. All men are created equal, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that sort of thing. And they always seem to be against that if it's not them. Oh, they don't mind getting a lot of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but if you don't happen to fit their profile of what they think an American should be, you're going to get the shaft. And for those who are trying to use the libertarian label and using that to further their agenda of oppressing other groups of people that they don't like and hate and fear for some strange reason, that shit just is not supposed to fly. For any libertarians watching this, I just have to say, these people are hijacking your party and they're hijacking your name, and they've been doing it for a while, and I would suggest you guys do whatever the hell you can to stop them from doing it. Or maybe you guys are doing that already, which is why probably they're now forming their whole Tea Party thing. But I'm still finding a couple of yahoos running around calling themselves libertarians, and last I checked, they didn't fit the criteria. So for those who are fitting the criteria, well, make sure that they're not hijacking your name.